Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to Stormfront, the Dresden Files, Book 1, Chapter 2, because I just read the first chapter. Like I mentioned in the last video, and I'll probably keep mentioning throughout this series as I'm reading it, this is... it's not a lot like what me and Mika are trying to do with our series, but it's a pretty good indication of what we want to start with and where we can go as a whole, I think. I described it in the last one as a combination of... what did I say? I don't remember now. But if you guys have seen Daredevil, really anything of Daredevil, they're all pretty much the same. But specifically Daredevil, the Netflix series, Season 1, picture that mixed with Constantine, which was actually a pretty good show. I was very disappointed that it got canceled. But yeah, it's a lot like the two of those things and just kind of merged together. To give you an idea of what me and Mika are doing, another way we've described it is Game of Thrones with superheroes. Anyway, before I get too much distracted, considering I just spent a minute and a half talking about it, let's get into it. We are on Chapter 2, page 10. Karen Murphy was waiting for me outside the Madison. Karen and I are a study in contrasts. Where I am tall and lean, she's short and stocky. Where I have dark hair and dark eyes, she's got Shirley Temple blonde locks and baby blues. Was she? I don't know. Where my features are all lean and angular, with a hawkish nose and a sharp chin, hers are round and smooth, with the kind of cute nose you'd expect on a cheerleader. It was cool and windy, like it usually is in March, and she wore a long coat that covered her pantsuit. Murphy never wore dresses, though I suspected she'd have muscular, well-shaped legs, like a gymnast. She was built for function, and had a pair of trophies in her office from Aikido tournaments to prove it. Her hair was cut at shoulder length and whipped out wildly in the spring wind. She wasn't wearing earrings, and her makeup was sufficient quantity and quality that it was tough to tell she had any on at all. She looked more like a favorite aunt or a cheerful mother than a hard-bitten homicide detective. I don't know. "Don't you have any other jackets, Dresden?" she asked, as I came within hailing distance. There were several police cars parked illegally in front of the building. She glanced at my eyes for half a second and then away quickly. I had to give her credit. It was more than most people did. It wasn't really dangerous unless you did it for several seconds, but I was used to anyone who knew I was a wizard making it a point not to glance at my face. Huh. I looked down at my black canvas duster with its heavy mantling and waterproof lining, and sleeves actually long enough for my arms. I have that problem. What's wrong with this one? It belongs on the set of El Dorado. Sorry. Little holdover from when I was reading the Twilight series. Never mind. And she snorted, an indelicate sound from so small a woman, and spun on her heel to walk toward the hotel's front doors. I caught up and walked a little ahead of her. She sped her pace, so did I. We raced one another toward the front door, with increasing speed through the puddles left over from last night's rain. My legs were longer. I got there first. I opened the door for her and gallantly gestured for her to go in. It was an old contest of ours. Maybe my values are outdated, but I come from an old school of thought. I think that men ought to treat women like something other than just shorter, weaker men with... never mind. Try and convict me if I'm a bad person for thinking so. I enjoy treating a woman like a lady, opening doors for her, paying for shared meals, giving flowers, all that sort of thing. It irritates the heck out of Murphy, who had to fight and claw and play dirty with the hairiest man in Chicago to get as far as she has. She glared up at me, A while I stood there holding open the door, but there was a reassurance about the glare, a relaxation. She took an odd sort of comfort in our ritual, annoying as she usually found it. I like that, that's nice. How bad was it up on the 7th floor, anyway? We rode the elevator in silence. We knew one another well enough by this time that the silences were not uncomfortable. I had a good sense of Murphy, an instinctual grasp for her moods and patterns of thought, something I develop whenever I'm around someone for any length of time, whether it's a natural talent or a supernatural one, I don't know. I'm a lot like that. My instincts told me that Murphy was tense, stretched as tight as a piano wire. She kept it off of her face, but there was something about the set of her shoulders and neck, the stiffness of her back, that made me aware of it. Or maybe I was just projecting it onto her. The confines of the elevator made me a bit nervous. I licked my lips and looked around. I get so tongue-tied. The interior of the car. My shadow and Murphy's fell on the floor and almost looked as though they were sprawled there. There was something about it that bothered me. A nagging little instinct that I blew off as a case of nerves. Steady, Harry. I feel like I should make a reference to something there, but I can't think of what it would be. Easy Chewy? I guess, I don't know. She let out a harsh breath just as the elevator slowed, then sucked in another one before the doors could open, as though she were planning on holding it for as long as we were on the floor and breathing only when she got back in the elevator again. Blood smells a certain way, a kind of sticky, almost metallic odor, and the air was full of it when the elevator doors opened. Sorry. It wouldn't be me, though, if I didn't. My stomach quailed a bit. Quailed? I don't know. But I swallowed manfully and followed Murphy out of the elevator and down the hall past a couple of uniformed cops who recognized me and waved me past without asking to see the little laminated card the city had given me. Granted, even in a big city department like Chicago PD, they didn't exactly call in a horde of consultants. I went down in the paperwork as a psychic consultant, I think, but still unprofessional of the boys in blue. Murphy preceded me into the room. The smell of blood grew thicker, but there wasn't anything gruesome behind the door number 1. The outer room of the suite looked like some kind of a sitting room done in rich tones of red and gold, like a set from an old movie in the 30s. Expensive looking, but somehow full nonetheless. Is that how you pronounce it? I've never known. Dark, rich leather covered the chairs. Again. And my feet sank into the thick, rust-colored shag of the carpet. The velvet velour curtains had been drawn, and though the lights were all on, the place still seemed a little too dark, a little too sensual in its textures and colors. It wasn't the kind of room where you sit and read a book. Unless I suppose I don't want to know. Voices came from a doorway to my right. Wait here a minute, Murphy told me. Then she went through the door and to the right of the entryway and into what I suppose was the bedroom of the suite. I wandered around the sitting room with my eyes mostly closed, noting things. My eyes mostly closed. What? I don't know. What did I say? Leather couch, 2 leather chairs, stereo and television and a black glossy entertainment center, champagne bottle warming in a stand holding a brimming tub of what had been ice the night before, with 2 empty glasses set beside it. There was a red rose petal on the floor, clashing with the carpeting, but then, in that room, what didn't? A bit to the one side, under the skirt of one of the leather recliners, was a little piece of satiny cloth. Sateen? I don't know. I bent at the waist and lifted the skirt with one hand, careful not to touch anything. A pair of black satin underwear. A tiny triangle with lace coming up the points lay there, one strap snapped as though the thong had simply been torn off. I'm uncomfortable. The stereo system was state-of-the-art, though not an expensive brand. I took a pencil from my pocket and pushed the play button with the eraser. Gentle, never mind. Music filled the room, a low bass, a driving drum beat. Why do I have problems? Wordless vocals, what? The heavy breathing of a woman as background, what? The music continued for a few seconds more, and then it began to skip over a section about 2 seconds long, repeating it over and over again. I grimaced. Like I said, I have this effect on machinery. It has something to do with being a wizard, with working with magical forces. The more delicate and modern the machine is, the more likely it is that something will go wrong if I get close enough to it. I can kill a copier at 50 paces. I had that problem too. What? The love suite, came a man's voice, drawing the word love out into love. What do you think, Mr. Man? I knew a guy who used to say that to people. That always bothered me. I don't know why. Hello, Detective Carmichael, he said without turning around. Carmichael's rather light, nasal voice had a distinctive quality. I don't know. I'm not even going to bother. He was Murphy's partner and the resident skeptic, convinced that I was nothing more than a charlatan, scamming the city out of its hard-earned money. Were you saving the underwear to take home yourself, or did you just overlook them? I turned and looked at him. He was short and overweight and balding, with beady, bloodshot eyes and a weak chin. His jacket was rumpled, and there were food stains on his tie, all of which served to conceal a razor intellect. He was a sharp cop and absolutely ruthless at tracking down killers. He walked over to the chair and looked down. Not bad, Sherlock, he said. But that's just foreplay. What? Wait till you see the main attraction. I'll have a bucket waiting for you. He turned and killed the malfunctioning CD player with a jab from the eraser end of his own pencil. I widened my eyes at him to let him know how terrified I was. Then walked past him into the bedroom and regretted it. I looked, noted details mechanically, and quietly shut the door on the part of my hand that had started screaming the second I entered the room. They must have died sometime the night before, as rigor mortis had already set in. They were on the bed. She was astride him, body leaned back bowed like a dancer's. The curves of her, making a lovely outline. He stretched beneath her, a lean and powerfully built man, arms reaching out and grasping at the sateen sheets, gathering them in his fists. Had it been an erotic photograph, it would have made a striking tableau. I don't know what that word means. Except that the lovers' rib cages on the upper left side of their torsos had expanded outward through their skin, the ribs jabbing out like jagged, snapped knives. I could feel it. It hurts. Arterial blood had sprayed out of their bodies all the way to the mirror on the ceiling, along with pulped, gelatinous masses of flesh that had to be what remained of their hearts. Makes me think of werewolves. But nothing else does. I watch a lot of Supernatural. Standing over them, I could see into the upper cavity of the bodies. I noted the now grayish lining around the motionless left lungs and the edges of the ribs, which apparently were forced outward and snapped by some force within. It definitely cut down on the erotic potential. The bed was in the middle of the room, giving it a subtle emphasis. The bedroom followed the decor of the sitting room. A lot of red, a lot of plush fabrics. A little over the top of us viewed in candlelight. There were indeed candles and holders on the wall, now burned down to the nubs and extinguished. Nubs. Something's wrong with me. I stepped closer to the bed and walked around it, the carpet squelched as I did. The little screaming part of my brain, safely locked up behind doors of self-control and strict training, continued gibbering. Did I say training? I tried to ignore it. Really, I did. But if I didn't get out of that room in a hurry, I was going to start crying like a little girl. It'd take a lot less to get me to start crying. So I took in the details fast. The woman was in her 20s, in fabulous condition, apart from being dead. At least I thought she had been. It was hard to tell. She had hair the color of chestnuts, cut into a page boy style. I don't know what that means. And it seemed dyed to me. Her eyes were only partly open, and I couldn't quite guess at their color beyond not dark, vaguely green. The man was probably in his 40s and had the kind of fitness that comes from a lifetime of conditioning. There was a tattoo on his right biceps, a winged dagger that the pull of the sateen sheets half concealed. There were scars on his knuckles, layers deep, and across his lower abdomen was a vicious, narrow, puckered scar that I guess must have come from a knife wound. There were discarded clothes around, a tux for him, a little sheath of a black dress, and a pair of pumps for her. There was a pair of overnight bags, unopened and set neatly aside, probably by a porter. What? I looked up. Carmichael and Murphy were watching me in silence. I shrugged at them. Well, Murphy demanded, are we dealing with magic here, or aren't we? Either that, or it was really incredible. Never mind, I told him. Or her. What? Sorry. I'm a little out of it. Carmichael snorted. I laughed a little, too, and that was all the screaming part of my brain needed to slam open the doors I'd shut on it. My stomach revolted and heaved, and I lurched out of the room. Carmichael, true to his word, had set a stainless steel bucket outside the room, and I fell onto my knees, throwing up. It only took me a few seconds to control myself again, but I didn't want to go back in that room. I didn't need to see what was there anymore. I didn't want to see the two dead people whose hearts had literally exploded out of their chests. And someone had used magic to do it. They had used magic to wreak harm on another, violating the first law. The White Council was going to go into collective apoplexy? I don't know. This hadn't been the act of a malign spirit or malicious entity, or the attack of one of the many creatures of the never, like vampires or trolls. This had been the premeditated, deliberate act of a sorcerer, a wizard, a human being able to tap into the fundamental energies of creation and life itself. It was worse than murder. It was twisted, wretched perversion, as though someone had bludgeoned another person to death with Botticelli? I don't know. Turned something of... I don't know what that reference is. Turned something of beauty into an act of utter destruction. If you've never touched it, it's hard to explain. Magic is created by life, and most of all by the awareness, intelligence, emotions of a human being. To end such a life with the same magic that was born from it was hideous, almost incestuous somehow. Game of Thrones. I sat up again and was breathing hard, shaking and tasting the bile in my mouth, when Murphy came back out of the room with Carmichael. All right, Harry, Murphy said, let's have it. What do you see happening here? I took a moment to collect my thoughts before answering. They came in. They had some champagne. They danced for a while, made out over there by the stereo, and then went into the bedroom. They were in there for less than an hour. It hit them when they were getting to the high point. Less than an hour? Carmichael said. How do you figure? The CD was only an hour and 10 long. Figure a few minutes for dancing and drinking, and then they're in the room. Was the CD playing when they found them? No, Murphy said. Then it hadn't been set on loop. I figured they wanted music just to make things perfect, given the room and all. Carmichael grunted sourly. Nothing we hadn't already figured out for ourselves, he said to Murphy. You'd better come up with more than this. Murphy shot Carmichael a look that said, shut up, then said softly, I need more, Harry. I ran one of my hands back over my hair. There's only two ways anyone could have managed this. The first is by evocation. Evocation is the most direct, spectacular, and noisy form of expressed magic or sorcery. Explosions, fire, that sort of thing. But I doubt it was an evocator who did this. Why? Murphy demanded. I heard her pencil scratching. That sounds like a bad word. On the notepad she always kept with her. Because you have to be able to see or touch where you want your effect to go, I told her. Line of sight only. The man or woman who would have had to be there in the room, or would have had to be in the room with them. Tough to hide forensic evidence with something like that. And anyone who was skilled enough to pull off a spell like that would have had the sense to use a gun instead. It's easy to. What's the other option? Ricky asked. Thaumaturgy is what I'm going to say. I don't know. I said, as above, so below. Make something happen on a small scale and give it the energy to happen on a large scale. Carmichael snorted. What? Bull hockey. I don't know. Murphy's voice sounded skeptical. How would that work, Harry? Could it be done from somewhere else? I nodded. The killer would need to have something to connect him or her to the victims. Hair, fingernails, blood samples, that sort of thing. Like a voodoo doll. Yes, exactly the same thing. There's fresh dye in the woman's hair, Murphy said. I nodded. Maybe if you can find out where she got her hairstyle, you could find something else. I don't know. Is there anything else you could tell me that would be of use? Yes. The killer knew the victims, and I'm thinking it was a woman. Carmichael snorted. I don't believe we got to sit here and listen to this. 9 times out of 10, the killer knows the victim. Shut up, Carmichael, Murphy said. What makes you say that, Harry? I stood up and rubbed my face with my hands. The way magic works, whenever you do something with it, it comes from inside of you. Wizards have to focus on what they're trying to do, visualize it, believe in it to make it work. You can't make something happen that isn't a part of you inside. The killer could have murdered them both and made it look like an accident, but she did it this way. To get it done this way, she would have had to want them dead for very personal reasons. To be willing to reach inside them like that. Revenge, maybe. Maybe you're looking for a lover or a spouse. Also because of when they died. In the middle of, no, never mind. It wasn't a coincidence. Emotions are a kind of channel for magic, a path that can be used to get to you. She picked the time when they'd be together and be charged up with lust. She got samples to use as a focus, and she planned it out in advance. You don't do that to strangers. Curses, Carmichael said, but this time it was more of an absent-minded curse than directed at me. Murphy glared at me. You keep saying she challenged me. Why do you think that? I gestured toward the room. Because you can't do something that bad without a whole lot of hate, I said. And women are better at hating than men. They can focus it better, let it go better. Heck, witches, where the heck did I lost my place looking at the page. Just plain meaner than wizards. This feels like feminine vengeance of some kind to me. But a man could have done it, Murphy said. Well, I hedged. Geez, you're a chauvinistic pig, Dresden. Is it something that only a woman could have done? Well, no, I don't think so. You don't think so? Carmichael drawled. Some expert. I scowled at them both, angry. I haven't really worked through the specifics of what I'd need to do to make somebody's heart explode, Murph. As soon as I have occasion, I'll be sure to let you know. When will you be able to tell me something? Murphy asked. I don't know. I held up a hand, forestalling her next comment. I can't put a timer on this stuff, Murph. It just can't be done. I don't even know if I can do it at all, much less how long it will take. At $50 an hour, it better not take too long, Carmichael growled. Murphy glanced at him. She didn't exactly agree with him, but she didn't exactly slap him down either. I took the opportunity to take a few long breaths, calming myself down. I finally looked back at them. Okay, I asked. Who are they, the victims? You don't need to know that, Carmichael snapped. Ron, Murphy said. I could really use some coffee. Carmichael turned to her. He wasn't tall, but he all but loomed over Murphy. Oh, come on, Murph. This guy's just jerking your chain. I don't really think he's going to be able to tell you anything worth hearing. Do you? Murphy regarded her partner's sweaty, beady-eyed face with a sort of frosty hauteur. I don't know. Tough to pull off on someone 6 inches taller than she. No cream, 2 sugars. I used to drink coffee all the time when I was a kid. I had to give it up when I turned 12. Or was it 13? Either way. I'm bizarre. Dang it, Carmichael said. No, never mind. He shot me a cold glance, but didn't quite look at my eyes, then jammed his hands into his pants pockets and stalked out of the room. Murphy followed him to the door, her feet silent, but shut it behind him. The sitting room immediately became darker, with the grinning ghoul of its former chintzy intimacy dancing in the smell of the blood and the memory of the 2 bodies in the next room. The woman's name was Jennifer Scanson. She worked for the Velvet Room. I whistled. I can't. The Velvet Room was a high-priced escort service run by a woman named Bianca. Bianca kept a flock of beautiful, charming, and witty women, pandering them to the richest men in the area for hundreds of dollars an hour. Bianca sold the kind of female company that most men only see on television and the movies. I also knew that she was a vampiress of considerable influence in the Never Never. She had power with a capital P. I tried to explain the Never Never to Murphy before. She didn't really comprehend it, but she understood that Bianca was a bad, but vampiress who sometimes squabbled for territory. We both knew that if one of Bianca's girls was involved, the vampiress must have been involved somehow too. Murphy cut right to the point. Was this part of one of Bianca's territorial disputes? No, I said, unless she's having it with a human sorcerer. A vampire, even a sorcerer, couldn't have pulled off something like this outside of the Never Never. Could she be at odds with a human sorcerer? Murphy asked me. Possible, but it doesn't sound like her. She isn't that stupid. What I didn't tell Murphy was that the White Council made sure that vampires who trifled with mortal practitioners never lived to brag about it. I don't talk to regular people about the White Council. It just isn't done. Besides, I said, if a human wanted to take a shot at Bianca by hitting her girls, he'd be better off to kill the girl and leave the customer healthy, to let him spread the tale and scare off business. Murphy said. She wasn't convinced, but she made notes of what I had said. Who was the man? I asked her. Murphy looked up at me for a moment and then said evenly, Tommy Tom. I blinked at her to let her know she hadn't revealed the mystery of the ages. Who? Tommy Tom, she said, Johnny Marcone's bodyguard. Now it made sense. Gentleman, Johnny Marcone, or Marconi. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? You know, in Gotham with Carmine Falcone, and then it's Falcone in the Dark Knight trilogy. Which do you prefer? Where was I? Had been the thug to emerge on top of the pile after the Bergassi family had dissolved into internal strife. The police department saw Marcone as a mixed blessing after years of merciless struggle and bloody exchanges with the Bergassis. Gentleman Johnny tolerated no excesses in his organization, and he didn't like freelancers operating in his city. Muggers, bank robbers, and drug dealers who were not part of his organization somehow always seemed to get ratted out and turned in, or else simply went missing and weren't heard from again. Marcone was a civilizing influence on crime, and where he operated, it was more of a problem in terms of scale than ever before. An extremely shrewd businessman, he had a battery of lawyers working for him that kept him fenced in from the law behind a barricade of depositions and papers and tape recordings. The cops never said it, but sometimes it seemed like they were almost reluctant to chase him. Marcone was better than the alternative, anarchy in the underworld. I remember hearing he had an enforcer, I said. I guess he doesn't anymore. Murphy shrugged. So it would seem. So what will you do next? Run down this hairstylist angle, I guess. I'll talk to Bianca and to Marcone, but I can already tell you what they'll tell me. She flicked her notebook closed and shook her head, irritated. I watched her for a minute. She looked tired. I told her so. I am tired, she replied. Tired of being looked at like I'm some sort of nutcase. Even Carmichael, my own partner, thinks I've gone over the edge in all of this. The rest of the station thinks so too, I asked her. Most of them just scowl and spin their index fingers around their temples when they think I'm not looking, and file my reports without ever reading them. The rest are the ones who have run into something spooky out there, and they're scared witless. They don't want to believe in anything they didn't see on Mr. Science when they were kids. That sounds like a show I would watch. How about you? Me? Murphy smiled, a curving of her lips that was a vibrantly feminine expression, making her look entirely too pretty to be such a hard. But what? Again, I don't curse. The world's falling apart at the seams, Harry. I guess I just think people are pretty arrogant to believe we've learned everything there is to know in the past century or so. What the heck? I can buy that we're just now starting to see things around us in the dark again. It appeals to the cynic in me. I wish everyone thought like you do, I said. It would cut down on my crank calls. She continued to smile at me, impish. But could you imagine a world where all the radio stations play ABBA? I love them! We shared a laugh. Heavens, that room needed a laugh. Sorry. Wow, this chapter was, well, admittedly, it's about 20-something pages long, so it makes sense. It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Hey, Harry, Murphy said, grinning. I could see the wheels spinning in her head. Yeah? What you said about being able to figure out how the killer did this, about how you're not sure you can do it. Yeah? I know it's bull hockey, I don't know. Why did you lie to me about it? I stiffened. Man, she was good. Or maybe I'm just not too much of a liar. Look, Murph, I said. There's some things you just don't do. Sometimes I don't want to get into the head of the slime I go after either, but you do what needs to be done to finish the job. I know what you mean, Harry. No, I said shortly. You don't know. And she didn't. She didn't know about my past, or the White Council, or the doom of Damocles hanging over my head. Most days I could pretend I didn't know about it either. All the Council needed now was an excuse. Just an excuse to find me guilty of violating one of the 7 laws of magic, and the doom would drop. If I started putting together a recipe for a murder spell, and they found out about it, that might be all the excuse they needed. Murph, I told her, I can't try figuring this spell out. I can't go putting together the things I need to do it. You just don't understand. She glared at me without looking at my eyes. I hadn't ever met anyone else who could pull that one off. Oh, I understand. I understand that I've got a killer loose that I can't catch in the act. I understand that you know something that can help, or can at least find out something. And I understand that if you try up on me now, I'm tearing your card out of the department Rolodex. I forgot about those things. And tossing it in the trash. Son of a gun. My consulting for the department paid a lot of my bills. Okay, most of my bills. I could sympathize with her, I supposed. If I was operating in the dark like she was, I'd be nervous, as all get out too. Murphy didn't know anything about spells or rituals or talismans, but she knew human hatred and violence all too well. And it wasn't as though I was actually going to be doing any black magic, I told myself. I was just going to be figuring out how it was done. There was a difference. I was helping the police in an investigation, nothing more. Maybe the White Council would understand that. Yeah, right, and maybe one of these days I'd go to an art museum and become well-rounded. Murphy set the hook. A second later, she looked up at my eyes for a daring second, before she turned away, her face tired and honest and proud. I need to know everything you can tell me, Harry. Please. Classic lady in distress. For one of those liberated professional women, she knew exactly how to jerk my old-fashioned chains around. I gritted my teeth. Fine. I said, fine, I'll start on it tonight. Ooh, boy. The White Council is going to love this one. I just have to make sure they didn't find out about it. Murphy nodded and let out a breath without looking at me. Then she said, "Let's get out of here," and we walked toward the door. I didn't try to beat her to it. When we walked out of the room, the uniformed cops were still lazing around the hall outside. Carmichael was nowhere to be seen. The guys from forensics were there, standing around impatiently, waiting for us to come out. Then they gathered up their plastic bags and freezers and lights and things and filed past us into the room. Murphy was brushing at her windblown hair with her hand while we waited for the ancient elevator to take its sweet time getting up the 7th floor. She was wearing a gold watch, which reminded me. "Oh, hey." I asked her, "What time is it?" She checked. 2:25. Why? Uh-oh. I breathed out a curse and turned for the stairs. I'm late for my appointment. I fairly flew down the stairs. I've had a lot of practice at them, after all, and I hit the lobby at a jog. I managed to dodge a porter coming through the front door with an armload of luggage and swung out onto the sidewalk at a lop. Lope? I don't know. Lopping? I have long legs that eat a lot of ground. My legs are long too, but I don't take large steps. Where was I? I was running into the wind, my black duster, there we go, billowing out behind me. It was several blocks to my building, and after covering half of them, I slowed to a walk. I didn't want to arrive at my appointment with Monica Missing Man, puffing like bellows, with my hair windblown and my face streaming with sweat. Blame it on being out of shape from an inactive winter season, but I was breathing hard. I wouldn't have made it. It occupied enough of my attention that I didn't see the dark blue Cadillac until it pulled up beside me, and a rather large man had stepped out of it onto the sidewalk in front of me. He had bright red hair and a thick neck. His face looked like someone had smashed it flat with a board repeatedly when he was a baby, except for his jutting eyebrows. Huh. He had narrow little blue eyes that got narrower as I sized him up. I stopped and backed away, then turned around. 2 more men, both of them as tall as me and a good deal heavier, were slowing down from their own jog. They had apparently been following me, and they looked annoyed. One was limping slightly, and the other wore a buzz cut that had been spiked up straight with some kind of styling gel. I felt like I was in high school again, surrounded by bullying members of the football team. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked. I looked around for a cop, but they were all over at the Madison, I supposed. Everyone likes to gawk. "Get in the car," the one in front of me said. One of the others opened the rear door. "I like to walk. It's good for my heart." "You don't get in the car, it isn't going to be good for your legs," the man growled. A voice came from inside the car. "Mr. Hendricks, please, be more polite. Mr. Dresden, would you join me for a moment? I'd hoped to give you a lift back to your office, but your abrupt exit made it somewhat problematic. Perhaps you will allow me to convey you the rest of the way." I leaned down to look into the back seat. A man of handsome and unassuming features dressed in a casual sports jacket and Levi's regarded me with a smile. "And you would be?" I asked him. His smile widened, and I swear it made his eyes twinkle. "My name is John Marcone. I would like to discuss business with you." I stared at him for a moment, and then my eyes slid aside to the very large and very overdeveloped Mr. Hendricks. The man growled under his breath, and it sounded like Cujo just before he jumped at the woman in the car. I didn't feel like duking it out with Cujo and his 2 buddies, so I got into the back of the caddy with gentleman Johnny Marcone. It was turning out to be a very busy day, and I was still late for my appointment. Whew! That was a really long chapter. I'll have to keep that in mind. I think a lot of it has a lot to do. I just get distracted and confused. Anywho, before I forget, I got I got 3 new lightsabers that are right here. I'll showcase them at a later time. I'm still playing. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I feel like it's going to be very helpful and insightful in regards to me writing out the chapters that I will be. Um, we have until October 1st at 11:59 p.m. to have something done, and if we don't, me and Mika can no longer be friends. At least one of us has to have something, and I'm going to do my best to have at least 3 um, um, rough drafts of chapters, not like a vague outline, for each. I want like at least 11 pages for each chapter done by them. So I'm going to have to get started. Probably at work, I'll be thinking up ideas and writing in my spiral. I might actually start typing out something right now, and then I can work on it from my phone. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, what I should be looking for specifically if you know this book, or anything I read here that you think would be especially useful. And I'll get with Mika and I'll discuss with him what's okay to discuss with you guys so that you can provide some feedback on what you would be interested in and what you wouldn't be interested in. Much like for this channel, I'd like to know your guys' opinion on the work that I'll be doing. Thank you, good luck, and until next time, goodbye everybody. I am so thirsty.